Originally, I had no intention of buying and playing Astro Bot. While I'd of course played Astro's Playroom, which came with the PS5, I thought it was just a nice little freebie and certainly not worth expanding into a full game. When Astro Bot was announced earlier this year, I thought there was no way that an extended tech demo could be released as a full-priced game, and I wrote it off as a simple cash grab. But jump forward to September and the reviews for Astro Bot started rolling in. Seeing the reviews and the hype on social media, I quickly changed my tune and boy am I glad that I did. I've come around completely on Astro Bot, and what I found was one of the most delightful, joyful and unexpected games of this year. And dare I say it, ever. In this review, I'll detail what makes it a damn near perfect Mario competitor, and by the end you'll know if it's worth picking up. With that out of the way, let's jump right in. Astro Bot and his robot companions have crash-landed on a remote planet. As the titular robot, it's up to you to seek out your ship parts across the galaxy and round up your lost crewmates. Hey, that sounds a lot like the plots of Pikmin and Pikmin 4. It absolutely is, and that's not the first Nintendo comparison that will come up in this video. Similarly, just like Pikmin 4, the crash site hub will grow and expand with the more stray bots you rescue. And exploring the universe of Astro Bot is a bit like Super Mario Galaxy, with levels being planets themselves. But man, what levels they are. Every level is an unexpected delight, with each one bringing in new level gimmicks and a sense of discovery each and every time. For example, there's an early level which starts with you having to grow a sprout which turns into a talking tree. Then you have to climb the tree itself, and as you climb the tree, it raps along to the background music, the whole time commentating what's going on. It's hilarious, unexpected, and one such example of the boundless creativity on display here. It seems to draw a lot of inspiration from Mario's Galaxy, 3D World, Odyssey, as well as Kirby and the Forgotten Land. Inviting this comparison is not a criticism of Astro Bot, and I'll touch more on this later. What I want to say here is that like those games, it's just a joy exploring each world and soaking up the wonder and creativity on display each time. I really wish I could do a Men in Black style mind wipe on myself to play it fresh and have that sense of discovery once more. But enough about the setting. How does it play? Astro Bot controls incredibly smoothly, just like he did in Playroom. His ability to hover alleviates the stress of jumping over gaps, and he does turn and move quite quickly in midair. This makes Astro Bot easier to control, less like Mario and more like Kirby. The camera also functions and moves perfectly, and I never found myself once failing because of it. Overall, it's a breezy platformer for the most part, not too challenging in terms of running and jumping. While it does get more challenging towards the end, it finally got to a level of challenge I love, where you die again and again and just have to persevere through it. But once it got to that difficulty level, the game was soon over. But that's okay, as it's still fun to replay each level as you go back to uncover all the collectibles. Here is where the real challenge of Astro Bot lies, exploring at your own pace to uncover each collectible. This is where it felt the most rewarding to me, maneuvering the camera and inspecting every platform to try and uncover hidden secrets. After clearing each level once, on replay you have the option of hiring a helper bird for 200 coins who will point out where the secrets are hiding. While that's good for those who want it, I think it's more fun to uncover secrets on your own, don't you think? On that note, that is one problem I have with Astro Bot and Sony games in general. It really rushes you to solve everything quickly by giving too much help. Another example of this is when it comes to the power-ups. I was using the magnet power-up that makes all the metal objects around you get drawn to you to be thrown as a projectile. While there was an obvious magnet emblazoned target in front of me that I was supposed to hit with it, I was taking my time looking around to see if there was a secret switch to hit while taking my time to enjoy the scenery. I did this for all of 1 second, and then the game prompted me with an on-screen display of what button I needed to press and where I needed to aim. I really hate that it rushed me in such an inelegant way. It reminds me of the exact same thing in another Sony game, God of War Ragnarok, where taking even a second to look around triggers a hint on how to progress. This is such a Sony thing, and I guess it's mandated by the higher-ups. While it's a small gripe here in my Astro Bot review, it's a trend I'm not a fan of. There's quality of life, there's even hand-holding, and now there's rushing. I don't see the need for it. Luckily, it's a minor gripe and it doesn't ruin the overall experience. And on those power-ups, man, what a variety. There's jetpacks, balls, and boxing gloves to name a few. While these remind me of Mario Sunshine, Metroid, and ARMS, What really makes them stand out, in addition to how they're used in-game, is how they really make the DualSense controller come to life. While Astro's Playroom was designed as a showcase for the DualSense controller, that is continued here in Astro Bot, and it really makes the most of this piece of hardware. The haptics really make every footstep feel different. There are minor vibrations while in Astro Bot's regular form, while in his heavy metal ball form, it's like you can feel the weight and sensation of that ball in your hands as it rolls along metal surfaces. The adaptive triggers function the same way, as they give the perfect amount of resistance that changes depending on the power-up or what you need to do. What this means is that you get an experience you can only get on the PlayStation 5. This is what an exclusive game should set out to do. While yeah, Astro Bot may look and play like a Nintendo game, the way it takes advantage of all the DualSense functions really sets it apart and makes it unique. It really makes me want to see what other Sony games can take advantage of this unique controller, and hopefully Astro Bot sets the benchmark of what's to come. Although, there are some sections that involve blowing into the microphone like a balloon. Something I was doing on the DS 20 years ago. Nostalgia. And speaking of nostalgia, it's time to address the elephant in the room. This is absolutely a celebration of the PlayStation brand's 30-year legacy. Many of the collectible bots' likenesses take after characters from PlayStation games both popular and obscure, from both in-house and third-party studios. I'm glad that other publishers played ball, with Konami allowing the use of Metal Gear characters, Capcom allowing the use of Monster Hunter, and Atlus allowing the use of Persona, to name a few. Unfortunately, there's a bittersweet feeling seeing homages to dead IP like Ape Escape, Parappa the Rapper, and more. They're on display like they're still a big part of Sony's brand, but fans have been clamoring for new games in these series for years. Even more surprising is the cameos from Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon. Both are integral parts of the early years of PlayStation's brand identity, but are now owned by the Microsoft-controlled Activision. Good for Microsoft playing ball and allowing the cameos, but Microsoft and Activision are also doing nothing with these two IP, with recent talks of a crossover between the two being axed. Therefore, the cameo-filled hub world feels like a bit of a graveyard sometimes. And there's something a bit sad about seeing the reanimated corpses of dead IP, whose universes have been killed off behind the scenes thanks to corporate decision-making. More on that later. And then, there's other IP that get really put front and center. There's levels themed after major properties like God of War and Horizon, and they play like cute versions of those games and function as advertisements for them too. But that doesn't diminish the game, as they're still fun to play. I dare say the Horizon level is more fun than actual Horizon. While I couldn't really get into Horizon way back when, playing that level in Astro Bot actually makes me want to give this series another shot. So while a more cynical person would be quick to dunk on the egregious use of PlayStation branding this game has, it's a celebration of the brand's 30-year legacy in the same way Super Smash Bros. Is for Nintendo. While as a nostalgia celebration, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate on Switch works a bit better, Astro Bot is still a nostalgic joy and never feels like a cynical experiment in stealthily advertising other Sony IPs. The fan service does not undermine the overall experience, it's just a bit of extra dressing on top of a rock-solid platformer. And onto the technical side of things, this is where Astro Bot gives the Nintendo Switch and Mario a run for their money. The smooth frame rate and high-resolution visuals also offer something to the platforming genre not seen on Nintendo platforms. Similarly, the highly detailed environments really make the most of the PlayStation 5's graphical capabilities. There's a power-up that allows Astro Bot to shrink to minuscule size, so seeing those assets like apples or coins up close, we can really see the texturing and 3D modeling on display. These are truly next-gen graphics, so Sony is really doing what Nintendo don't here. And it really means the Switch successor and whatever is next for 3D Mario has a lot to live up to. Seeing such a highly graphically detailed platforming game like this is something I never expected to see, so it really makes me excited for whatever's next in the genre. And finally, the music here absolutely slaps. Kenneth C.M. Young returns from Astro's Playroom to deliver a funky, electronic score that incorporates robotic voices and synthesizers. It really gives the Astro universe its own identity, unlike anything else. Once it comes to streaming services, a lot of these tracks will end up on heavy rotation for me. Just like the visuals and gameplay, the audio side of things is nothing but pure joy. To conclude, Astro Bot is a masterpiece in the platforming genre. While clearly taking influences from what the genre has already offered us, it charts new territory in its stunning technical presentation. While only a few issues about its difficulty drag it down slightly, it succeeds in not only being a loving tribute to the PlayStation brand's 30-year legacy, but it's also a damn fun fun, creative, and joyful platformer that will be replayed and talked about for years to come. While it does feel a bit like a Nintendo game on a Sony system, there's no real need to compare the two. Team Asobi have delivered a fresh take on the genre that does feel distinctly its own despite its obvious influences. We really ought to view Astro Bot in terms of genre rather than in terms of publisher. While we can see people all over social media throwing Astro Bot into the Nintendo versus Sony debate, I fail to see the value in doing this. All genres take influences from other games to iterate on one another. We see this all the time in genres like shooters. They all take influences from one another in the goal of genre refinement. That's what makes games such an exciting medium for entertainment. The difference between shooters and platformers is that platformers hardly ever get made by anyone else outside of Nintendo, and especially not Sony. So of course when Sony comes out with one, of course people will be quick to say it's a ripoff of the only other company that is consistently putting out platformers. Therefore, I hope this is the lesson that Sony can learn from this experience. Honestly, it's a miracle that this game got made for Sony hardware. Astro Bot was made by a small team on a modest budget. It's a 15 to 20 hour experience with no online modes and no microtransactions. In the same week that Sony shut down its hilariously unpopular shooter game Concord, Astro Bot was released to critical acclaim and high sales. In fact, it sold out on Amazon here in Japan. Who knew the secret to a successful game was creativity, positive vibes, and good gameplay? I really hope Sony and other major publishers see Astro Bot's success as a sign to get back into creating smaller scale but fun to play games again. Perhaps Sony can revive some of the dead IPs they parade around in Astro Bot, instead of pumping millions of dollars and man-hours into competitive shooters like Concord. So if you haven't already, if you're a PS5 owner, do the best favor you can do yourself and go and play Astro Bot. I can't imagine a single person not enjoying it. Only the sourest of sour pusses could not enjoy Astro Bot, which is the most fun this guy has had with a game all year. And it's certainly a Game of the Year contender for me. So, thanks for listening to all that. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and please consider subscribing. And if you have or haven't played Astro Bot, please leave your thoughts about the game down in the comments below. I'll reply to every one of them. So, take it easy, and I'll see you next time.